This is Oswego, New York. We are entering the Erie Canal system, and this will take us all the way from Lake Ontario to the Hudson River, which gets us to New York City.
The Erie Canal is a waterway with numerous locks that connects the Hudson River with the Great Lakes, running all the way to Lake Erie. We will join it on the Spur Canal running from Oswego on Lake Ontario. Then we'll enter the Hudson River at Troy and sail the 140 miles down to New York City. In just 5 days, we will do what would have taken us a month by the St. Lawrence River.
This is the route for anyone who's in the Great Lakes. There's this fantastic canal system that goes through the New York State. We can leave Lake Ontario here at Oswego, New York.
We've just arrived at the United States here in Oswego, and this is how you're supposed to clear in with customs these days. U.S. Customs and Border Protection. They rely on you to be a good chap and call in. It's a video phone, just weatherproof video phone. Pick up the phone, push the button, and push to report suspicious activity or push to call the customs.
So we're entering the first of the locks on the Erie Canal system, and we're headed for New York City.
Don't be daunted if you've never done locks before. We do them just fine with the two of us aboard. Easiest if we come port side to the lock, since that's where our helm throttle is located. We prepare to come in either side, but out of season like this, the locks are rarely crowded and we can choose our favorite side. It's often just us or one or two other boats in the chamber. Many locks have ropes just hanging down. Cheryl grabs this as we come in, then I get the stern one. I loop the stern line around this heavy plastic-coated wire. Then my line can just slide up as the boat rises nearly 20 feet. Cheryl is pushing us off gently with the boat hook as the current swings us around. Plan about 20 minutes to go through each lock. All the locks are open to the general public for visiting. Some also include picnic tables and grills. Boats are welcome to tie up for the night free of charge at most locks, and many towns offer complimentary dockage. The locks are all similar, with chamber dimensions capable of raising and lowering boats up to 300 feet long, 43 feet wide, and have a theoretical 12-foot draft. Although the Erie Canal was opened in 1825, nearly 200 years ago, the whole system was modernized between 1905 and 1918 with these larger dimensions and 20th century machinery.
Just past Fulton, the Oswego Canal joins the main Erie Canal. We are using the canal to travel 190 miles from Lake Ontario to the Hudson River. But the system was designed to go all the way from the Hudson up to Buffalo, New York on Lake Erie. So if we wanted, we could bypass all of Lake Ontario plus Niagara Falls and go straight from here to Buffalo.
Cold September mornings often bring fog on the Erie Canal as we head across the open water of Lake Oneida. Normally not a concern for us, this lake can kick up a chop of a couple of feet, so you had better have the mast tied very securely on deck. How embarrassing it would be to lose it overboard.
On the western side of the lake is the vacation town of Sylvan Beach, resting today in the fall sun. Here we enter a long land cut, dredged in 1918 as part of the expanded Erie Barge Canal. Dredging continues even now as areas silt in and trees fall into the canal.
After the Revolutionary War, Lewis and Clark, I think, had just gotten back. By 1825, they finished the Erie. They started the Oswego. 1854, they made it forever free because it was such an economic engine. Civil War times, they did the first rebuild. Went from 4 foot deep to 7 foot deep. turn of the century, there was talk about doing away with the canal. They figured they had diesel by then, they had steam, they didn't really need this. And he wanted it modern and standardized. Every lock's the same size. Different kinds of equipment at different locks. This is called a heavy equipment lock, because everything's heavy, real heavy. Every 10 foot of water is 1 million gallons. And every vertical foot of gate is 1 ton. Because you're looking at these now, you gotta figure these gates go 12 more foot down to get to the bottom, and then they kind of go past the bottom because there's a cement ledge that those gates rest against. So they're big.
I ask what life would have been like for a lock keeper in the olden days.
Oh, immensely busy. Even just back in the 60s, it was terribly busy. Like I say, the busiest one in the state. My family and myself would have probably lived in the lock house. We would have had flowers and vegetables to sell to people going by on barges. That'd be it. That'd be our entire existence, would be right here. Just the same as if you were a homesteader. Before the Erie Canal was built, it took a month to get from New York Harbor to Ohio. Once the Erie Canal was built, it took them a week. They thought they were airborne.
Probably the largest boat that can go through the locks are these mini cruise ships, custom made for the canals. They are short enough to go under the bridges if they lower their radar and antennas, and they just fit in the locks with inches to spare. Looks like a fun way to see the locks if you don't have your own boat here.
This is one of the old Erie locks. This was the enlarged version, basically version 2 of the canal. In this case, the locks were about 110 feet long and had an improved capacity over the originals, but the barges were still pulled by horses, which meant that they always had to have a tow path next to the canal, and the barges were relatively small. Quite a few of these are still around, showing the way the system used to be in the old days. Really is a neat way to get into these little towns. I wish we had a little bit more time to explore them. This one looks really cute. This is really about the summit of the system. So as we've come up from Lake Ontario, almost 150 feet or so, now we're going back down, and we'll be going down to the Hudson River. So we've got almost 400 feet to go down over the next day and a half until we get into the Hudson. Autopilot says we're here. This is the lock at Little Falls. These guys are great. You call them up on the radio in advance and they get the gates open and ready for the boat to come in. There's not much traffic on the system these days. It's mostly pleasure traffic that's using the Erie Canal, and we're coming slightly out of season, I guess now the end of September makes it a little past the height of the season, and the main traffic here is the other boats that are headed down south. We must be almost at the bottom here. Look at these lines, holy moly.
This is the only lock on the system where the lock gate doesn't open like a door, but instead lifts up vertically. It means we get dripped on as we go under.
The next evening, another of the canal cruise ships pass on their way down to the Hudson River and New York City. They transit the whole Erie Canal in just 2 days, since they don't mind moving on into the evening after we've tied up.
Have a good cruise.
At Troy, the Erie Canal finishes, and we're in the Hudson River, still over 100 miles north of New York, but this part of the river is wide and navigable by large ships. There are no more low bridges, so we head down a few miles to Catskill to raise the mast at Hoppeno's Marina. There are a few options for raising your mast. If you've done it yourself before, you might choose Castleton, where there's a DIY option, or as we do, choose a yard like this where the crew manage the job and operate the crane. Hoppeno's Marina at Catskill is nicely protected from wakes at the top of the creek, so the boat doesn't wiggle around at a crucial moment.
So Sean, how many masts do you do every year?
About 225.
Wow.
We plan a whole day to get the rig all sorted out, boom and sails on, then we're out into the Hudson River, where it's 2 days on to New York. Thanks for watching this Distant Shores how-to segment. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on upcoming videos. Are you interested in the cruising lifestyle? Are you planning to sail away on a cruising adventure? Or researching cruising areas and destinations? Distant Shores is a television series about the cruising life, with lots of tips for sailors planning to sail away.
This is Oswego, New York. We are entering the Erie Canal system, and this will take us all the way from Lake Ontario to the Hudson River, which gets us to New York City.
Plus destination information to help you make your cruising plans.
I can stand on the bottom.
We've been filming Distant Shores for nearly 15 years, and know the fun and challenges of the cruising life. We've made Distant Shores with you in mind. We include plenty of cruising tips in this travel series, as well as lifestyle segments and hints for sailors heading to exotic destinations. Encouragement for you and your crew to get out cruising. Destinations include the Intracoastal Waterway, the Bahamas, Caribbean, the Mediterranean, Scandinavia, transatlantic passage making, the French canals, and more.